Hi, this is Ginny Pomeroy, and today I want to talk about digestion. Digestion is very important for our health. If we can't digest well, then we aren't going to be able to absorb our nutrients well, and without the proper nutrients, we can't build tissue, we can't heal from injuries, and we are going to get sick. So obviously the purpose of digestion is to turn food into the building blocks of our that we need for our physical body, and also, wrong way, also to provide energy for all of our organ systems. Okay, the components of the digestive system. You've got your head. In your head you have a brain, and you have a mouth, you have jaws, teeth, tongue. All these things are critical for good digestion for obvious reasons. The alimentary canal refers to the tube, the muscular tube that goes from your mouth to the esophagus, into the stomach, into the small intestine, into the large intestine, into the rectum, and out the anus. That is known as the alimentary canal. Your pancreas is this organ here, and it has many different functions. If you recall from the sugar carbohydrate lecture, it is very involved with blood sugar regulation, with insulin and glucagon. But in terms of digestion, it is also where our digestive enzymes are produced. And we have the liver and the gallbladder. The liver produces bile, and the bile is stored in the gallbladder, and that bile is critical for breaking down fats in our digestive system. Okay, this is a figure that is in your book, figure 4.32, and it's a great little reference, so I urge you to look at that. It talks about what organ it is and what it does. The mouth and the salivary glands and the teeth all help to break down the first part of food. In the esophagus, produces mucus, moves the food from your mouth into your stomach, and in the stomach, we will go into a little bit more detail in just a minute about that. I just want to point out that digestion happens north to south, meaning top to bottom. So it begins in our brain, and the sight of food, the smell of food, the taste, and just the thought of food is enough to start digestion rolling along. I want to look specifically at the wall of the digestive tract, or what we just called the alimentary canal. And what we see that is consistent throughout all the parts of your alimentary canal is that you have all these layers. So the lumen is what's inside the digestive tract. Then you have your mucosal layer. Then you have a submucosa, which is rich with lots of blood vessels and lymph vessels. You have muscles, circular muscles, longitudinal muscles. Sometimes you have diagonal muscles. And then you have the serous membrane on the outside. So why do we care about that? Well, that particular orientation provides a barrier from what's inside your digestive tract to what's inside your body. So ultimately, what is inside the alimentary canal is actually outside of your body. It's not part of your body yet. Okay, so the mucosa is the layers. So the mucosa actually refers to the layer of cells that cover the inside wall of the digestive tract. And they're very important because we need them to be functioning properly. They're often very thin, but they have multiple functions depending on which organ we're talking about. They, most importantly, allow the nutrients and water and other substances to cross into our bodies. All right, and here's the picture of, this is just a drawing. These are mucosal cells with villi at the end, and this is what is known as a tight junction, so that these cells are bounded together, and this forms the barrier. So things that are outside of, or I should say, outside of us, inside the digestive tract, can't get through unless they cross all the way through the cells. And here's a blow up of a cross section of a small intestine. One of the things that I just will point out are that there are different types of cells that are part of this one cell layer mucosa, and they have different functions. Some of them produce enzymes, some of them produce mucus. So let's go into that a little further. Okay, stomach. The first step, the stomach is the site of the first step of protein digestion. And muscle contractions mix and churn the contents of the stomach and turn it into what they call chyme. All right, and here's just a picture of the stomach, and you can see that there are various parts of it. The fundus in the body are the big parts here, and then down here, the pylorus is where the food comes in from the esophagus, stays in the stomach for a while, and exits via the pyloric sphincter into the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. Okay, the stomach mucosa is actually a very, very specialized membrane. It's very specialized because what it can do is it produces the mucus layer that protects itself from very acidic contents. And the stomach has to be extremely, extremely acidic in order to accomplish its goals. And no other organ has this much acid in it. And so I want to point out that it's extremely important for our stomachs to have acid for digestion. So the pH of the stomach acid is 1.5 to 3, and that's very, very acidic. I'm going to just jump forward a slide here so I can show you. This is the pH scale. pH stands for power of hydrogen, and you may have learned this in basic chemistry in high school. But pH of 7 is neutral, and that is what we have with water. Pure water has a pH of 7, and it means it's neutral. Every time you go to either side of 7, you're going either into an acid or into a base. So the lower the pH, the more acidic a substance is. The higher the pH, the more alkaline it is. So hydrochloric acid in stomach acid, you look down here and it's listed down here at 1, which just means that it is extremely, extremely acidic. So just going back, why do we need it to be acidic? Well, first of all, it's our first line of defense against pathogens. Pathogens being any kind of bad organism that might come in through our food. And so that's the first thing. Protein digestion needs an acidic environment to activate the enzymes. So enzymes are produced in the mucosa of the stomach and released into the lumen of the stomach, where there is hydrochloric acid, which can change it into an active form, which will help to start breaking down proteins. If you recall from our protein lecture, our protein foods need to be broken down into polypeptides, and then from there they are broken down further into amino acids. Okay, the acid is produced by chief cells in the stomach mucosa too. So our stomach mucosa produces pepsinogen, which is the inactive form of pepsin. It produces stomach acid, and it produces mucus to protect itself from all this acid. All right, we covered that. All right, so now let's move to the small intestines. So the intestines is where most of your nutrients are absorbed, and the picture of the mucosa that we saw a few moments ago shows how our small intestine has many villi, which open up and allow for more surface area for our digestion to take place. Large intestines also are doing some absorbing. They will reabsorb water, certain nutrients that have passed along. They'll reabsorb toxins, and they'll reabsorb cholesterol and reabsorb red blood cells. And what happens with these are that they get sent back to the liver, and the liver will start to use these to produce bile. And this is how we get rid of our toxins, is through our bile. The real function in the large intestine, though, is to eliminate waste. But I want to mention one of the very important thing about large intestine is that it is the home of our microbiome, our microflora. There are billions of microscopic organisms that live in our colon, and if we have a good balance of symbiotic ones, meaning they live with us and help us, versus pathogenic, then we are going to maintain good digestive health. One of the things that the symbiotic organisms do is they aid in the digestion of cellulose. And if you recall from the carbohydrate lecture, Dr. Gardner discussed how fiber is so important. And we use our symbiotic microorganisms to help us break down cellulose, which is in many fruits and vegetables. The cellulose actually is feeding our good bacteria. So that is why it's important to have really good sources of fiber in our diet in order to make sure that our symbiotic organisms are happy, getting enough food. If they don't get enough food, then the pathogenic ones who like other things like refined carbohydrates, sugars and whatnot. If you're eating a lot of sugar and not enough fiber, then you're going to be feeding your pathogenic organisms, and they can get out of balance. It leads to a lot of health issues, in my opinion. And what they are finding, there's lots of really interesting current research being done right now, but they are finding that an individual's unique complement of microorganisms seems to correspond to their overall health. Even there are a number of professors at Hassan who are doing some work, research on microorganisms, and so I know that you will be hearing more about microbiome in the future, whether you hear it in this class or whether you hear it as part of the new growing movement of wellness. Then it's something that I want to make sure you have learned a little bit about. Okay, well, thank you for listening, and I wish you well, and I hope your microbiome is healthy because of your good choices of food.